Howdy, welcome back. This week we're going to look at getting the truck started. We're going to do some investigation with the clutch to try to figure out how I can free that. We're going to refurb the steering wheel. We're going to finish that project up. And finally we're going to break down the carburetor, again, to try to get the truck started. We'll see how that goes. Let's jump right in. I'm out here looking at the caps on the rotor, and interestingly, this one's covered in corrosion. I don't know if you can see, but there's all kinds of gunk around this one. And it wasn't actually all the way seated. So I think that's where part of our misfire is coming from. So I'm going to pull this out, see if I can get it seated correctly. One of the things that I notice is that when I have the cover on the truck for a long period of time, it tends to trap moisture inside. And the inside of the engine gets a little damp, so I think that could be part of what's going on. I'm going to try to clean that up and make sure it seats all the way this time. All right, so that is seated. The other thing I'm doing is I'm moving all of these plugs up and over the heater hoses because they're underneath the heater hoses and sitting right on top of the water neck, and that's not good for this thing. That's not good for the hoses when this thing gets hot. Let's get that in place. All right. So it looks like that's looking better now. All right. The other thing I was looking at was wanted to look and see. I'm going to pull the rotor off of this thing and see what the points look like. Because if the points are corroded, again from that same wet, then I know that something is really up. So looking at this right now, this thing is pointed at about, what is it, about 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock? Right there. That looks like it's pretty good. All right. Let's try putting this back on. Yeah, there's a little bit of funk on these things. We're going to get that off of there. That could be part of our problem. That's a piece of plastic. But this has some kind of corrosion or something on it. Use this to get the rest of this stuff off. All right, so first this goes back on, and it looks also like this is clean, so I think we're okay there. This is almost brand new. I put this on I think beginning of last year or maybe the year previous. That was one of the first things I did, was get this thing running, so it's only like 2 years and maybe 10 minutes of idling old. So that's not going anywhere now. Let's try running her up and see what she does. I can smell gas. Yeah, a little bit of gas coming in the filter. This is a new filter. I just replaced that, so that's a good sign. Although it wouldn't have backfilled from here because this has got a loop in it. Let's put a little gas in the carb and see if we can get a run off of something in the carb. And there's more fuel getting up there. I'm going to close the choke and see if that does anything. It's cool but not freezing out here right now, so I wonder if that could have any part of it. I don't know why I'm not getting a ton of power off the battery either, because this has been on a trickle charger for a long time. All right, we're gonna let her sit for a little bit. Put this back on for now. I'm gonna let her sit and we will pivot to the clutch while I am out here. All right, so the point of this is you got to have the clutch in order to help you release the flywheel from the clutch disc. So I've got it propped open now. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to use these 3 short ones for my next trick, which is going to be trying to get into that in between the flywheel and the clutch disc and see if I can free that up. I've been spraying it with PP Blaster for the past week. I don't know if that's made any difference or not, but I'm going to try this first. Then the next thing they say is you're supposed to get in and basically with all 4 tires on the ground, you put the truck in gear, you put the brake on, and you bump the starter. And that's supposed to break the clutch free. That'll be the second thing. I'm going to try this first without hopefully ruining the clutch disc. So let's cut these bad boys out of here. Harbor Freight was having a big sale this weekend, but they weren't. They didn't have these on sale, which is kind of a bummer. Let me get one of these long ones too for the hell of it. I'll get this one out of here just in case I need that extra leverage. I don't even know if I can fit this under the truck at the angle I need, but I'll bring it down there just for the hell of it. Better to have it than not. All right. That. Somewhere. There it is. All right. Let's go see what we can do underneath this thing. So here's what's going on with my clutch as I understand it. This is the old flywheel, pressure plate, and backing plate from the Scout. And the problem that I'm having is that the wheel here is basically frozen to the flywheel. Basically, I've got to separate these 2 things, which means I've got to find a way to get a screwdriver or something up in between these 2 pieces, which is pretty much impossible because as you look at these, I'm going to put this back where it belongs. There's only a very small amount of space that I can get some kind of something up in between these 2 things. There's basically no space, and The other issue is that the bell housing comes down over this thing to about here. So I've got to be able to get a screwdriver in and then over and then sort of shove it in this way. And that's pretty much impossible. I don't have anything. The screwdrivers that I bought are not going to do it. So I just wasted $20, which is kind of a bummer. I'm trying to think of some other way I can do this mechanically, and I can't unless I do something extreme and actually drill into the bell housing from like here, and then try to like stick something in there and try to, jimmy it that way. That would be the only other thing I could do. So hello and good morning. It is a Sunday. The clock tells us that it is 9:30, but it actually is 8:30 because of daylight savings. So I'm a little out of sorts. And I'm going to drive with my friend Bennett up to a junkyard, pick up some parts for a couple of different cars. I'll film a little bit of that, but let's look at the Travelall first. We're going to pull the plugs in the engine and see if they're fouled, because she doesn't want to catch right now, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So we'll check that, see if it's running rich, see if they're fouled or whatever, and then try to backtrack from there. Here's what we're looking at for the first plug. That's pretty gunky. There's a lot of stuff on there. I'm going to pull one from the other side and see what it looks like. But this is just a random plug. I brought it over here in the sunlight to see. I'll pull a couple more and see what they look like, but these are going to have to get cleaned off. All right, so here's the update. I pulled all the plugs, looked at them all, cleaned them all up. With the exception of 5 and 7, all of the plugs were pretty gross, like the one I just showed you. Kind of fouled, smelled like gas, had a bit of oil on them, so I cleaned them up. 5 was not too bad. 7 was almost completely clean, which is really interesting. So I'm going to trace this one back, see what it looks like under the cap here, and figure out if it's actually making contact or if there's some sort of corrosion or something there. And then I'll do the same for 5, and then I'm going to try firing it up again and see if she'll catch. All right, I put her on the boat tank again, and she's still not catching. Getting fuel, that all seems to be working fine. She'll hit, but she just won't catch. Like, I can hear her trying, and I'm not sure what's going on here. So I've got to have more of a think about it. I am almost at the point when I think I've got to pull the carb off again and clean that out and see if there's something stuck in there or something's going on in the carb, because that's the only other thing I can think of. I'm getting spark, plugs are clean, I'm getting fuel, so it's got to be something with the carb itself. Let me fool with the choke for another minute, and I'll choke it off and see if that will catch. So here's a quick interruption. My buddy Bennett and I got together and went to a local junkyard to look for some parts for his Crossfire. The first one that we found was this poor carcass. You can see here it's been pretty well picked over. We were looking at this corner rocker section here. His is rusty and bad, so we tried getting that out. He actually came back later to pick up more of the pieces on this thing, but it was pretty well picked over. Then we went over to this Nissan Versa and pulled the electric steering out of it for a 60s Mustang project he's got. You may remember I had done the same thing with a Versa earlier, and was able to get the column out. So we pulled this one out. We got the steering wheel off and the airbag and a lot of other junk, and basically just made a mess of this car trying to get it out. There is no good, clean way to get it out, but we were successful. And taking another detour, I finally got some supplies in to work on my steering wheel project. The first of which was this adhesion promoter, which is basically something after you spray and clean the steering wheel, then you spray this stuff on, and then you put the actual paint on. So I'm doing the first coat of the adhesion promoter here, just making sure I get all the nooks and crannies and everything. You can see my incredible ghetto garage there in the background. I let this dry, and then while that was drying, I looked over the actual paint itself, which is this gray. It's called BMW 88 Gray, and this is what it looks like in the truck. Maybe the dashboard is just a little bit darker, and this is a little bit bluer. There's maybe a little bit more green in the dashboard, but that's close enough. I don't think you're going to notice that. If I hold this up, it's really sort of hard to see, but if I hold this up here, that's not too far off. Here's what the steering wheel looks like after a coat of its BMW gray. I think that looks pretty damn good. It goes on really smooth. I put there's an adhesion promoter that you put on this stuff first, and it looks like it worked really well. I think that looks really clean. So I'm going to wait and let this dry for about maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to come back to it with the UV protectant, which is the final coat, and that's supposed to protect all of this and make it look really clean. This is the old original wheel and the new one. The new one's a bit lighter. I'm actually kind of shocked. Not too bad though. And then if I put this up against the door card, when I put that up against the door card, that's actually not bad at all. That's pretty close. So I'm pretty happy with this. I think I can live with that. As a test run, I mean, maybe in the future I might go for a darker color, but I'm gonna stick with this for now. And then depending on what happens with any replacement column I get, I'm still looking for a replacement column I could put in this thing. I may spray that replacement column with the new color just to match this thing, because I have enough of this stuff to go around. So let's get the protectant on this now and get it set up. I've got 2 layers of UV protectant on this thing now. I think it's looking pretty good. I'm happy with how clean it all looks. I think I'm going to let this one dry. I'll let it cure overnight, and then we'll see what it looks like tomorrow. Here's how the final product came down. This is the new steering wheel. Actually, let me flip it over. Okay, so that's the upright. Here's the steering wheel that's completely done. This is what it looks like. It's not too far off. It might be like 1 shade lighter than the old one, but again, this is probably, I mean, it's dirty and crappy and looks really garbagey. If I hold this up to the dashboard there, I mean, that's pretty close. I'm not displeased with that at all. I think that's quite good for what it is. Again, it could be maybe a little bit more green, but also the other thing to keep in mind is that this panel is actually from a 67. This is the original from 63. Seems a mixture, it's different stuff. Actually, the wheel is a little bit darker. And then when I hold it up to the color on the door skins, it's actually right on time. And that's also the color that's down here. So, I mean, am I ever going to get this thing to be all one color? No. But this wheel looks a million times better than the original wheel. And like I said before, if I can find another column, when I find another column that I'm going to use to cut up and put electric steering in this thing, I'm going to basically sand all of this stuff down and clean this stuff up, and I'll paint it the same color as this new wheel. So I'm really pretty happy with this. I think this, for my first shot, turned out really well. So I'm going to put this back down to the basement. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spare cover that I've got and see if I can clean that up and get that ready. Because what I'll do is I'll clean it up, sand it, see if I can pop this center cap out and paint it this same color and treat it the same way, and then I'll put all this stuff together. Hi there, it's Sunday, and I'm going to knock a couple of small things out today. It's raining and kind of crappy out, so I'm in and out of the garage here. Big thing I'm going to do is pull the carb off of the Travelall, see if I can get that cleaned out, slap it back on the truck and see if I can get it started. Putting a recovery package together. My buddy Bennett and I are going to go up to a house in Western Maryland and look at a Scout that a friend of ours had with some parts and see if we can get that started, figure out what the story is there. I'm going to do some small stuff on the Scout, fix the zipper, put a PCV valve on it, and do some other small things around here. So let's get to it. First thing I did, finally got the bolt out. This is a grade 8 bolt, and that goes to a nice shiny International Harvester seat belt. I'm now letting this dry. I'm going to put the other half of this in on this side. which will make that look nice. I've got to basically seal that up. This actually had a captive bolt underneath. This one didn't, so I've got to go out and get some bolts for the underside of this and a big fat fender washer. I'm going to try to get those bolts out now. They're pretty well rusted, but let me see what I can do here. 3 of the 4 seat belts are now in. This is the original. These 2 are from the green truck, and I need a fine thread bolt for the underside of the latch on the driver's side, but I think that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Nice to see the logo on there. So I'm gonna turn to a couple of other quick things out here before I head inside and it starts raining. After 3 different weekends of trying to get the truck started, I was at my wit's end, so I finally pulled the carb off and figured I would pull it apart to see how clean it was inside. And this is just basically starting that process. It wound up that the fuel bowl was still full of gas, so I had to drain it out a little bit more. I got gas all over this rag that was underneath here. There's some yuck in there. I bet that's what's going on. So then after this, I was able to actually pull the metering block and the carb floats out and check all that stuff out. It was pretty dirty inside. Oh yeah. All right, so there's all kinds of crud at the bottom of this. I bet the last of the yuck is got up into the carb here and clogged it up, and that's why we're having problems with fuel at the carburetor. All right, so I cleaned these out with brake clean. Let me just get the last of these valves there. Now I'm going to spray the inside of this out and get it all cleaned up. Let's put this back together again. This one, there's a lot more resistance here. I wonder what's going on. Doesn't want to, oh, now it's going in. All right, that's more like it. That's going in better now. Weird. All right, so that's all the way in. Backing it off 1 full turn. We'll try that and see how that works. Choke is smoother now. The front one was never bad, so I'm going to leave that alone. All right, accelerator pump looks like it's working well. I noticed that the accelerator pump linkage isn't on here correctly. It should be underneath this, but it's not. So let's pull this clip off. The cam that this thing sits on doesn't really move the, I guess it doesn't go that far. Doesn't really move the accelerator pump all that much. It's interesting. So I think what I'm going to do now, because it's not raining currently, I'm going to pull the cover off and slap this sucker back on. I don't know that I'll be able to actually run it up today, but all of that crud that came out of the bottom that I wiped off with a rag here, and all the crap that I saw come out of the fuel bowl, or the fuel and onto the side of the bowl, and then the stuff that I sprayed out just now, looks like this thing was pretty dirty. It must have sucked up a bunch of garbage into the carb. I guess on that first start that I tried. You know, let's see what it does now. Carb is back on the truck. I actually had tried to record all that and my camera didn't work. But the carb is back on the truck. I just tried starting it just as it was and didn't get anything. It didn't want to fire. I was getting it very, very close, but I feel like I've got to mess with the idle screws and a couple of other things to get the proper mixture going. That's all fine and good. I'm going to worry about that a little bit later because I've got some stuff I want to do inside. But all in all, for having pulled this off, cleaned it out, put it back on, I'm pretty happy with that, like last half an hour or whatever that took. So the other thing is my battery. I think my battery's kind of, it's like 2 years old, but it doesn't give me a whole lot of charging power, which is really frustrating. So I'm going to let this sit, charge up, and continue working back in the garage on some stuff. I got some other things I want to tackle today, and then I'll come back to this. You might not know it from this channel, but I actually own a Scout as well, and I wanted to replace the PCV valve that was on this truck. I think it may have been partially to cause for some of the transmission issues I was having last year. It could have been clogged and it might have been overpressurizing the crankcase. In any case, I put a new one on, and that only took about 10 minutes, maybe 5, I think. Here's the old PCV valve. That is now out. I can actually hear it, so it doesn't sound like it was bad, but because of what was going on with my transmission last year, I just want to make sure that this is not the issue, so I just put a new one in. This spare 2300 I've got is pretty gross. This entire thing is still locked up. I can't move the butterflies at the bottom here at all. I did crack this open, and it's a completely different type of carb than the one that's on the truck, which is kind of interesting. So what I'm going to do is let this sit. If I can't free this up, there's no point in trying to do anything with this. So I'm just going to let this continue to soak, and that'll be that. The other thing I'm doing is putting together a basic recovery package. This is only the basic stuff. I've got more stuff that's got to go in here. Bring my toolbox and some other stuff. I've got the boat tank over here and some other, I'll bring my tool roll and a couple of other things, but I've got to pack up and head back inside now. So that'll do it for right now. So once again, thanks for watching. I'll put a link to merch at the very end of this thing. Everything you might spend there goes back into this truck, so I appreciate it. And I will see you in a week or two.